Everybody, Nike here. There was the balance patch has hit, and it had a sort of big effect on Herald. The good news is we only lost a little bit of DPS. We still have all our insanely good boon generation, and our DPS, we did lose some, but it's still, I would argue, best in slot boon quickness DPS in the meta. So essentially what this means for Herald is that our gearing has gotten a little bit more complicated. I will say, if you are sort of a lower intensity player and you're cool taking a sort of big hit to your damage, you can continue playing the greatsword camping build that was in my build video, and that would be fine. But if you do want to kind of keep up your DPS and still be competitive with where you used to be, you'll need to run and learn the greatsword sword rotation. I will be doing a video, or I will be doing a breakdown of that rotation later in this video. So if that interests you, you can skip ahead to the rotation. Otherwise, we're going to talk a little bit more about the gearing because it has gotten somewhat more complicated. Essentially, the issue is to do good damage, we need greatsword sword. But to do any good CC, we need staff on swap, which means you have to be very judicious about when you bring staff and give up your DPS and when you do not. There are certain bosses where it is an absolute no-brainer. Samurag or Slothosaur, you are 100% expected to carry your team's DPS or carry your team's CC with the staff. So you must run staff on swap. Okay, so minimally you need two build templates, a CC template and a no CC template. That's all good. If you want to take it even a step further, Greatsword is really still good against big hitbox bosses because it has Eternity's Requiem, which hits a hugely more amount of times against big hitboxes. The benefit of that is on small hitbox bosses with CC requirements, you're going to do better damage with sword, and staff. And on big hitbox bosses with CC requirements, you're going to do better with greatsword and staff. Which means now we're looking at a pure DPS template, a sword, staff, small hitbox CC template, and a greatsword, staff, big hitbox CC template. This is purely for min-max. Not necessary. Me personally, I don't bother with the greatsword, staff, big hitbox CC template. Camping sword is only a slight hit to our damage on big hitboxes, and I quite frankly don't have enough equipment templates to make it work. So right now what I'm doing is a greatsword, sword, DPS template, and a sword, staff, CC template. And that's good enough for me to get by, and I think I can recommend that for you. So let's talk about the rotation. If you are comfortable with the greatsword camping rotation, I was initially worried this was going to be a lot more complicated and it would be hard to recommend to the average player. But after a little bit of practice, it's pretty clear that the greatsword, sword is only one or two button presses more than the greatsword camping rotation. So it's not bad at all, and you guys can easily learn it. So if that interests you and you want to continue doing some pretty good DPS here with your Quick Herald, stick around and let's get into the rotation. Alright, so for the rotation, things start off basically the same. You do the same opening burst that you're used to, where you do Facet of Elements, Facet of Strength, Facet of Chaos, and then Eternity's Requiem, and then Legend Swap. The only difference is that as we're casting the Eternity's Requiem and we're Legend Swapping, we are also going to Weapon Swap at the end of the Eternity's Requiem cast. So you'll see we do our opening burst, there's Facet of Strength, next up is Facet of Chaos, and then Eternity's Requiem, and boom, swap to Shiro, activate Impossible Odds, and press Sword 2, Sword 4, and Sword 5. And that's really the only differences. And you're just going to auto attack in sword and use sword 2 off cooldown. And that's essentially it as far as the differences. The difference is just that after the Eternity's Requiem, you swap to sword and you do your sword burst. When we get to the end of our energy in Shiro, we are going to use our last sword 2, and we swap back to dragon, use our 2 DPS facets, and then swap to greatsword and cast Eternity's Requiem, and then we use 3 and then 2. And you'll notice I don't give a fuck about interrupting my auto attacks. I use 2 and 3 when I can without, and I don't pay any regard to the chain. What this ends up doing is you get a couple of casts of these off per rotation, and you'll see we try to get as many 2 and 3s in as we can per rotation. And then we just go back into the same burst as before, where we do the facet of strength, facet of chaos, and then greatsword 2 to fill in the gap a little bit, and then Eternity's Requiem. And it's the same, swap back to Shiro, activate Impossible Odds, and use sword 2, sword 4, and then sword 5. And we really, really pump the damage out doing that. And that's really all there is to it. The only difference from the Greatsword Camping rotation is that as you swap to Shiro, as soon as your Eternity's Requiem cast is over, you're going to swap to sword and do your sword burst. There's really no other difference. It's really just adding one weapon swap to the build, and pressing slightly different keys when you're on sword. Again, no big deal. Very easy to learn. If you're already very comfortable with the Greatsword Camping rotation, I don't think that this is going to be very hard for you at all. So anyway, that is the slow-mo breakdown of the rotation, and I will do one at normal speed so you can get a feel for it. Alright guys, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. But anyway, thanks, and I will see you next time.